Timmy Joe reviews anything.
Reviewing computer parts on YouTube.
Woo! Gotta be pumped on that, right, Will? Computer parts! Woo!
Oh, yeah.
What's going on, people? My name's Timmy Joe. I make videos about computers on the internet. And this was going to be some big video about, running 780 Ti's in SLI. And I was going to do all the benchmarks. And then I ran across some things, and I had someone recently talk to me about adding a card in their system. And I thought, this is a good opportunity to do a video in 2019 for the layman's, okay? For the people that aren't, super versed. So if you're some, super overclocking genius and you're a fan of Timmy Joe, this video might not be for you, but maybe stick around anyways. Come on, it's a fun video. We're going to talk about SLI, and it's not a good idea. Especially now that I got two 780 Ti's in this wonderful test bench here, and I've been doing some testing. I've come to the conclusion that in 2019, it is absolutely the worst idea to do SLI. And I'm talking to you newbies. Maybe you're, all right with putting a video card in your system or doing a little bit of tweaking here and there, but you're not the super versed kind of person that, knows every single little thing about the current generation of new RTX cards and stuff. You just play video games with your system. I'm here to tell you it's a bad idea to run SLI, and I'll give you some pointers as to why it is. So I recently did a video with this. This is a 690. Okay, there's two 780 Ti's in this system. This is basically two 680s in SLI built into one card. And I found out that in 2019, not a whole lot of games support SLI. It's a big pain in the butt, and it's probably a good idea just to avoid it. But we'll start off real quick with a reason why you might want to, okay? That's probably because you're an enthusiast, and you're a tweaker, and you like playing with stuff like this, like I do, and you like running benchmarks. Right now we're running 3D Mark Firestrike. It is going to be the absolute best case scenario for running two cards in one system, okay? And this same goes for Crossfire on the AMD side, okay? This does apply, basically, they're not exactly the one-to-one comparison, but SLI, Crossfire, both a bad idea, and you definitely want to check out before you even consider getting the two cards if your game supports it. And we'll definitely talk about that near the end of the video, okay? But yeah, we're running the best case scenario here for SLI. I'm going to show you why it might seem like a really good idea to add a second, graphics card to your computer. So, running benchmarks, it's going to pop up here, and boom! We almost hit 20,000. 20,000 with a 25,253 on the graphics score. So that's just, looking at the performance of the cards. That's incredible. That's GTX, I would say 1070 Ti performance, almost RTX 2070 performance, almost GTX 1080 performance, almost AMD Vega 64, 56 performance there. So it seems really good on paper, okay? And here, I need to turn it off because it's so loud. Oof, there we go. Turn the overclock on it. That's a best case scenario. I got these cards overclocked. That's why they sounded like, crazy. But 25,253 on the graphics score. And if we hop over to a single cards benchmarks, which I did a whole review on the 780 Ti in 2019. It's right here. You can go check it out if you want to see the performance on just one of these cards and how it's actually still a pretty good card. 1080p for running high settings for the most part. But yeah, you see the graphics score there of 13,272. So we're almost getting 100% scaling, okay, with this thing. 100%. That means you're almost getting the benefit of actually having two cards and it being double the power. So that looks really, really, really good, right? Wrong. This only works in a slight number of games. Really depends on the resolution too. It depends on a lot of things, but you'll never see that in real games in real life. And there's a whole bunch of extra problems that come along with it. So where this came along was I have a buddy who was asking me, he's pretty good with computers and stuff. I definitely would say he's not, a total noob, but he maybe hasn't been keeping up on the times of, what the new hardware is and stuff. He asked me, dude, you have a line on a GTX 780? I have one, and Apex Legends is hammering the card. I'd like to add a second one so I can get better frames. And I straight up said, this was before I even knew anything about Apex Legends SLI support, that's probably a bad idea. Probably a bad idea. That's what I'm always going to tell a layman about SLI. It's just a bad idea. Had he gone out without asking me or doing some research and bought a second 780 Ti, or sorry, 780 even, he would have found out very quick that Apex Legends does not support it. Now there are ways around that. We might talk about that a little bit, but it's, if he plugs the cards in, it's not going to work. It's just a bad idea. Okay? We'll run off quickly a couple reasons why it's a bad idea. Double the heat. I've been running benchmarks on this thing. I've done a few takes. It's 25 degrees in here, and that's not even as hot as it's been. It was 27 at one point. Okay? Also, double the power consumption. This system, which mind you has a very power-hungry processor as well, running over 800 watts from the wall with the 780s and SLI. That's crazy, 780 Ti's. Over 800 watts. So that means you got to make sure you have a power supply that will even support SLI in that configuration. Does your motherboard support it? Do you have a bridge? AMD's cards recently don't use a bridge, but the HD 7000 series, if you want to add another one of those, you do need a bridge. Can you find a card that maybe matches the age of your card? Is it going to be a good idea if you have like a 5-year-old graphics card you've been playing League of Legends on 24 hours a day? Is it a good idea to go out and buy another one to run dual cards when your card might even die soon because it's full of dust and it's gross? Probably not a good idea. Okay, and it introduces VRAM issues as well. This has 2 gigs of VRAM. Okay, even though technically there are 4 gigs on board, technically there are 6 gigs between the two 780 Ti's. Even though you're doubling the graphics processing power, sorta, you're not doubling the VRAM. Okay, and games today in 2019 want lots of VRAM. They want greater than, I'd say, 3 gigabytes, and that's what this thing offers. So all of a sudden you're adding a whole bunch more horsepower, but you don't have the gas, we'll say, to support it, or you don't have the transmission. There's a missing component that's going to make your car not go fast. So keep that in mind. That's just some of the reasons why you might not want to. Another reason is frame time issues. As soon as you put 2 cards together, all of a sudden you're going to see a lot more skipping, especially in some games more than others. But you're going to be oh man, I got it running in SLI, it's awesome, and it's working in my favorite online, game. I go and play, and you're going to get a skip right as you're trying to get a headshot, and you're going to curse that you ever did that. That's if you can even get it all up and running in the first place. So, poof! Here's a list of the games there's on Nvidia's website. I don't even think this thing's current, that support it. So do your research, because it's a big deal if you're trying to add more graphics horsepower and your game isn't supported, like Apex Legends isn't, right? You can go check out the Nvidia website, or it's just a good idea to Google, my card, SLI, this game, see if it works. Because Google will tell you pretty quick if it does. But you can go on Nvidia's website and check out some of the games that that do support it. And then if it doesn't support it, there are ways around it. This thing called Nvidia Profile Inspector. But in the case of Apex Legends, I was able to get SLI running with this. But it was using this program that I actually had a couple people comment that Nvidia Profile Inspector can trigger the anti-cheat in Apex Legends and get you banned. So all of a sudden you're trying to get more performance and you got to do this trick, which is like a program that allows you to apply profiles. Like games have to support SLI, but oftentimes they're built on an engine and another game that's a little bit like it. You can apply the profile from it and get it working, but then all of a sudden you're banned in Apex Legends, and I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a whole thing. So it's just probably not a good idea. So some games that definitely don't work out of the box. Apex Legends, Battlefield 5. Battlefield 1 did support it. Ray tracing was a priority, apparently. I did get it running pretty well with NVIDIA Profile Inspector, but out of the box, it won't. Fortnite, the new Resident Evils, Devil May Cry, Metro Exodus, all games from 2019 that straight up don't support SLI or Crossfire unless you fiddle with them, okay? Some games that do, okay? And here's an interesting thing. Grand Theft Auto 5 was always the staple of good reason to do SLI. It has very good SLI support. When I ran this in single card and I did the benchmarks, and then I ran it in dual card, at 1080p with the settings cranked, you can go really high in Grand Theft Auto, but like very high is where all the settings were for the most part. I didn't notice any performance difference. And I was like, what is going on? Although I did notice that the GPU usage when you went in SLI was at like 50%. So there your cards are only working half as hard, and you might as well have the one in there working, 100%, and you get the same frame rate. And it wasn't until I loaded up 1440p and did a little bit of research and saw that at 1440p, the 780 Ti will benefit you when you're going in SLI, 780 Ti, because the horsepower is there, and like I guess there's no reason if you're, GTA 5 just goes, well, you're over 100 and something frames per second. In SLI, why would it be add, any more usage? It's just there's no reason to run the game at any higher frame rate. But at 1440p, it did add about 53% better scaling. So, 53% scaling with the two cards at 1440p and GTA 5, it works. But if you don't have a fast refresh rate monitor, or you don't have a higher, refresh rate resolution than 1080p, it's just a no-go. It's just this dumb idea. Maybe it would be better if you had a GTX 770, but like, where else, like, you going? It wouldn't be a good idea to go any lower than that for SLI support, anyways. So there's no reason at 1080p to run SLI on Grand Theft Auto, except for like on a handful of cards out there. So keep that in mind. Rainbow Six Siege recently got support for it at 1080p. I only got 20% scaling with the two cards in there. Okay, so Rainbow Six got a little bit better performance, especially in the benchmark, but I actually found the experience didn't change that much at 1080p. So another game makes no sense to do SLI on, even though it supports it. Far Cry 5, I got 20% at 1080p. I went from 60 frames a second to 85 frames a second-ish. So there was a little bump in performance, but is it worth buying a whole other card? Probably not. Shadow of the Tomb Raider got pretty good scaling, actually, but 75% at 1080p. Only on medium settings, though, because I can't utilize that game sucks a lot of VRAM, and you need to dial back the settings in order to get good frame rates with a 780 Ti at all. So adding that second one, you have to stay at the medium resolution, so what's the point anyways of getting the second card? Crysis, I only saw a 15% improvement, and I think that's because this thing runs Crysis at 60 frames a second already, and I usually benchmark in the rain, and I think we're running at a VRAM limit, so there wasn't that great of scaling. Some other games that work, PUBG, Witcher 3, The Division, the original one, there's a lot of games from a while ago that if you have a 780 Ti, they're already probably working all right. You're thinking of getting the SLI for the newer game, and it's not going to work. So I guess what I'm getting at is it's pretty much just a terrible idea to do SLI in 2019 unless it's because you want to have two cards in your system and they look pretty. Unless you happen upon the second graphics card for quite a cheap price. Unless you love running benchmarks. Because rather than spend, what's a 780 Ti worth? $100? Rather than go spend $100 on a second one, you could sell it for $100, then you got $200, and you could go buy a GTX 1060 6GB, and you'll probably, in let's say Apex Legends, get like 20 or 30 frames a second better, because you have more VRAM, and because it's just a newer generation, newer architecture, and I believe that game just runs a lot better on newer generation cards. So, did you learn something? Is it just kind of suck? This was something that was, like 15 years in the making, and they could never really get it right, and it's basically been given up on, and the only reason why the new RTX cards have support for SLI is because of benchmarking. Because they want to give the enthusiasts the option to put two 2080 Ti's in a system and get double the benchmark in Time Spy, or in whatever that ray tracing one is. I forget what it's called. Anyways, that's the only reason why the support is there, because people like it, and they might as well continue with it at the very high end, because it's a little value-added thing for the enthusiasts out there. So I'm at Watch Timmy Joe, Instagram and Twitter. I hope that you learned something today. Don't do SLI probably a bad idea. And if you're considering it at all, do a lot of Googling and a lot of YouTubing on the particular setup you've got before you ever pull the trigger on that second card, because it may end up that you only have a 1080p monitor and you have the second card and you don't even get any better frames. I'm at Watch Timmy Joe, Instagram and Twitter. I already said that. I got a Patreon if you wanted to contribute to it. If you're new here, I usually benchmark the crap out of stuff and this, that, and the other thing, but it's worthwhile. I'm funny, I'm hilarious. Hit the subscribe button and I'll see you guys in another video. Don't ever, ever, ever let a friend SLI. See you guys later.